There are three surprising things about the world's fastest 5,000 meter runner, Joshua Cheptegei's running form, that you too can use to run faster and stay injury-free. Let's start with what happens just after his foot strikes the ground. As we can see from this clip, Cheptegei, the current 5,000 and 10,000 meter world record holder, runs with a mid-foot strike, with each footfall coming down beneath a slightly bent knee. Just as I always want to see. No overstride at all, just an efficient long stride. But it's what happens to the foot immediately after it hits the ground that really surprised me when I first saw his running technique in slow motion. Just look at the amount of pronation or inward collapse of the foot we see when he loads it. Now, there are definitely a few things going on here. Firstly, despite how running stores try to scare us with the dreaded P word, there's nothing wrong with pronation in and of itself. The inward collapse of the foot, while certainly fairly extreme in this clip, is just one of your body's natural shock absorbers in action. Of course, running at 10,000 meter world record pace as he is in this clip, Cheptegei's running cadence is well above 180 strides per minute, getting close to 200, meaning that his ground contact time would be very short compared to the likes of you or I running at a more normal pace, and therefore likely a slower cadence. That means that while the movement of his foot and ankle look quite dramatic, the stress and strain experienced by the muscles and tendons around his ankle are less than they might be if he weighed 10 to 15 pounds more and was running 10k at a much slower pace with the same foot and ankle biomechanics. And of course, running a 10,000 meter world record attempt on the track, you better believe he's running in as lightweight spikes as he's comfortable in, not his normal road shoes, which would offer more support. In fact, we can see this in action. Here's a clip of him running in Nike Vaporflies, which of course still don't provide much support, but more than those spikes. Anyway, the point I want to make here is that while it's easy to assume that the best runners in the world have perfect running form, they, like you and I, have their individual quirks and run really high weekly mileage just fine, even despite, in Cheptegei's case, having foot and ankle biomechanics which would have many running store assistants pushing them towards heavily supportive running shoes. The most important thing when it comes to finding the right running shoes is to base your decision on what feels comfortable, not what the fancy in-store gait analysis machine tells you. In fact, there's genuinely more research backing comfort than any other more scientific sounding system of selecting the right shoe. So, listen to your feet. Now, despite his perhaps less than ideal foot biomechanics proving that he is in fact human and that nobody's perfect, what I'm about to show you is truly incredible and responsible for his ridiculously smooth running form, with not an inch of wasted movement. Let me show you what I mean. Here's a shot of Cheptegei running down the back straight with his stride in full flow. Look at the level of his shoulders versus the advertising hoardings just behind him. It's clear to see just how little excessive bounce there is in his stride. In any runner's form, whether it's you, me, or the best in the world, there needs to be a balance between forward propulsion and upwards propulsion with each stride. Enough upwards to clear the ground while getting the most from your stride length with horizontal forward propulsion. Find the right balance between the two factors, like Cheptegei does, and you'll find yourself able to make long, smooth strides without wasting your energy bouncing up and down. Think about this for a second. If you make 40,000 strides in a marathon, which is probably an underestimate for most of us to be honest, and you bounce 1 inch more than would be optimal in each stride, that's a lot of wasted energy. In fact, it works out to an extra 1 kilometer's worth of upward effort. Not ideal. So how does Joshua Cheptegei manage to find a balance? Well, look at the stride angle he achieves, the separation between lead and trailing legs at the hip. His hip extension is pretty wild, using his glutes and hamstrings to push off from the point where the foot is under his hip to when the foot leaves the ground. Using these hip extensors effectively as he does produces more of a horizontal push into the ground than we see when we look at a runner like Ben here. Ben's one of my subscribers here on this channel and submitted this running footage for me to analyse via the link in the description. Here he's running at his interval pace as part of his training for the Sydney Marathon. He might not be running at Cheptegei's pace, but he's certainly running fast and working hard. Look at the difference in stride angle. Sorry Ben, I know it's not fair to compare you to a world record holder, but the point I'm making isn't to say that he needs to achieve the same angles. Instead, we need to consider where the propulsive power is coming from. Because Ben isn't showing the same degree of hip mobility into extension, chances are he's not generating as much of a push from the hips using his glutes and hamstrings, meaning that he has to pick up the slack, so to speak, elsewhere. By that, I mean he's going to find himself working harder through his calf muscles to push off through the ankle to make up for the lack of hip drive. Of course, there's always going to be an important degree of push-off through the calves and ankles, but think about the sheer anatomy. The glutes and hamstrings are big, powerful muscles, whereas the calf muscles are more sinewy and designed to transfer force rather than create significant power. When we rely disproportionately on a push-off through the calves, not only do they tend to get tight, but you end up creating more of a vertical push into the ground just because of the positioning of the ankle joint. That's what creates the bounce we can see when we look at Ben's head versus the stadium roof in this shot. So if I were Ben's coach, I'd be getting him to work on a little more hip mobility work on a regular basis, as well as working through drills focused on driving from the hips. I usually find that simple exercises like a split squat or Bulgarian split squat are great for building glute and quad strength, while loading the hips through a more run-specific range of motion, encouraging more hip extension, and improving your capacity to open up and run with a bigger stride angle when the pace dictates. We're also normally told to stretch our hip flexors, which honestly most of us do need, but I want to focus on strengthening them. This resistance band exercise is a great option for building strength in those hip flexors to improve your knee drive. You can find more run-specific exercises like these in my Bulletproof Runners program, as well as a detailed 8-week video course to help you master your running form. If you're interested, check out the link in the description and grab yourself a 7-day free trial. Anyway, back to our friend Joshua. The third point is way less scientific and something that will make a huge difference to any runner who gives it a try. It's a fascinating habit that will trick your brain into thinking you're able to keep running faster for longer. Look at these two clips. Both show Cheptegei running down the home straight, about to smash the existing world records for 5,000 and 10,000 meters respectively. Does this look like a man who's emptying the tank to beat the clock? Is this the face of a runner who's pushing himself to a dark place and suffering for the cause? The relaxation in his face and upper body is incredible, not a sign of a grimace, tight shoulders, or clenched fist. If I ever get to meet him, I'd love to ask whether it's a conscious strategy or whether he's naturally just cool as a cucumber. Either way, staying relaxed in the face, shoulders, arms and hands, maybe even raising a smile from time to time, will help to send positive signals to your brain, keeping your perceived effort under control, maybe even lowering it a little. The worst thing you can do is allow your heavy breathing to cause your shoulders to rise up and arm swing to become stiff and laboured. Focus on relaxed arms, loose from the shoulders, driving your elbows backward. The late Kelvin Kiptum is another great example of a runner who managed to maintain incredible running form even when running the fastest marathon of all time. Click or tap the video linked on screen right now to discover what we can all learn from the fastest ever marathon runner's incredible technique. I'll see you over there.